So what is your belief in terms of the timeline of the construction of these things?
In the oldest instances, I personally believe that it's pre-flood. So, more than 12,000 years ago. I think there are some that are probably older, very, I just got back from Peru a couple of months ago. That's fully unexplainable. You've talked about Peru on your show many times. Egypt is incredibly ancient. I actually believe that India is one of the most ancient places on Earth. And were they different civilizations building there? What they built suggests that it probably was. Were they in contact with each other? I believe they were. There's enough similarities around the world that it feels like there was a communication network between them. But when you look at the actual building styles take those three examples, India, Egypt, and Peru, they're completely different, right? Egypt is very just blocks, very few decorations, especially in places like the Osirian. It almost looks, it's like clinical, But then you're in Peru and it's playful. There are these big pillowy blocks. And then you go to India and there's carvings all over everything, right? And so I do believe that there are certain places in this world that are substantially older. And I believe that for thousands of years, civilizations they're attracted to these places and they build on top of them and they settle there. And so you just see generation after generation after generation of building on top of them.
Well, it makes sense when you think about Kailasa, because look how perfect it is now. And this is thousands of years after they attribute it to being built, or at least 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's been zero erosion.
Yeah.
Now, add a few thousand years to that, it's going to look exactly the same.
Yeah.
And if you're just generation after generation, like not knowing who built it, and you get a version of, this king said he did it, or this guy said he did it, like, add a few thousand years, and it's fucking guesswork.
100%.
And to have archaeologists shift through dirt and find an inscription somewhere and go, oh, we nailed it. Like, God, that's such a disservice to what the complexity of the mystery of what we're looking at is.
Yeah.
Like, just the Kailasa one is, I am obsessed with that place. I've watched like 4 or 5 documentaries on it, and we went over it on the podcast the other day with the CEO of Perplexity.
I saw
it's
that.
Like, it's fucking bananas.
Yeah.
It's so crazy how precise, and one mistake and you're fucked.
Yep.
But yet it's all geometrically aligned. They have no idea what they did with all the stone.
Yeah. That's the big question, right?
That seems so crazy.
They removed an entire cliffside mountain, and they carved it from the top down.
Yeah, and put it where? Would you do it at all?
Good question.
That's so much rock. That's not a little bit of rock. You would think there'd be some laying around.
Yeah.
Even after thousands of years, you'd have like a pile somewhere. Like, fuck it. Anybody want some free stone? It's over there. No one's going to take all the stone. You have fucking millions and millions of tons of stone. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
What'd you do with it?
You know what I wonder? I do feel for archaeologists, right? I mean, they go to a site and they're like, gosh, maybe this feels a little older, but the only evidence I have are potsherds that I can date. I can dig down and I can find cultural layers of cultures that, in my opinion, lived there afterwards. They're dating that, and they see inscriptions. And that's the evidence that they have to make their case. But I do wonder how many of them are looking at these sites and saying, yeah, this actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
A lot of the young ones.
I would think so.
I've talked to them. I think this is the hierarchy, the structure of academics, and in terms of these guys that are teaching university courses and giving out PhDs and writing books. And they have a vast body of work that's all about the timeline,
yeah,
and all about what they know, and they are the gatekeepers of information. And there's a lot of ego involved with academics. I'm sure you know that. And they get really shitty with each other, and they're vicious. They're vicious when they attack each other, even if they're wrong. Like the whole Clovis first thing was the best example of that.
Yeah.
The gentleman who proposed this theory that there were people here older than the Clovis people was destroyed by his own peers. And it took years before it was proven that he was correct. And not only was he correct, but he was correct by like over 10,000 years.
Yeah.
Like now they're pushing it past 22,000 years ago because of the footprints they found in White Sands, New Mexico.
Right. The peopling of the Americas.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So humans have been here a long, long, long time. And this is just indicative of this pattern that happens whenever anybody comes up with any sort of an alternative theory that doesn't come from the gated halls of academia. They're just dismissed. But academics have only been around for a few hundred years. Like, we have to stop and think about how crazy it is that we've put the power in these people that we know are not always accurate, nor are they compromised, and they have ego problems.
Yeah.
And they have this structure of the people at the top that are giving out grants and giving out funding and giving PhDs and reading people's dissertations. It's like, it's very social and it's very complex. And to deviate from the narrative is devastating for your career. Like,
Yeah.
if they can destroy the guy who proposed that Clovis first was incorrect, that guy was an academic. He was established.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're a fucking PhD student and you're like, I think you guys are wrong. Well, you're fucked forever.
You know, I used to work in corporate America, and there were a lot of things that I thought that I absolutely never said. Right? So if you think about these young archaeologists, even if they see something and they think, gosh, I wish that I could dive into that and really explore how old this is, they're going to get shut down immediately, and their self-preservation mechanisms are going to kick in because they've got a paycheck. You know, you have to sympathize with the situation that they're in.
Oh, I do. I completely do. Look,
Yeah.
we've all worked for shitty bosses. It's a terrible position to be in.
Yeah.
And especially if your shitty boss is in charge of the distribution of information about the history of the human race. That is crazy. That is
Yes.
crazy to get ego involved in that.
I know.
Because when you see like the attacks on guys like Graham Hancock and all these people that propose that this data that we should look at, that's just it. Like, there's a bunch of data that confounds the timeline. Like, it fucks it completely up.
Yeah.
When Göbekli Tepe came along, and then everybody was like, okay, we have a problem. We have an 11,000 plus year old structure for sure.
Yeah.
It was purposely buried 11,000 plus years ago. So how old is it? It's at least 11,000 years old. That doesn't make any sense because timeline of civilization is supposed to be 6,000 years ago. So now we have immense stone structures with 3D carvings that are in concentric circles. That's 5,000 years older than that.
Yep.
Okay, these are hunter and gatherers. They were just assholes that in their spare time from killing antelopes, they decided they were going to build immense structures on
Yep.
the top of a hill.
Well, and don't you find it interesting that the dating of Göbekli Tepe has not opened the door to redating other sites around the world? So when you talk about the stuff in Egypt, nobody's really open to saying, maybe this is 10,000 years old. Should we look again?
Right.
You know, that story has been written. There's been a period on it, and it's been put to bed.
Not only that, there's actual geological evidence. And this is where Robert Schoch came into play. You know, I have had him on the podcast before, and I remember watching that documentary on the mysteries of the Sphinx. And he proposed that there's water erosion on the outside of the Temple of the Sphinx. And he's taken photos of that erosion and brought it to other geologists and said, what do you think this is? And they said, well, that's water erosion. And then he shows them where it came from. They're like, I don't want to have nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
Which
Just
is
kidding. It's wind.
Crazy. Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Imagine the timeline of human history is so controversial that you're worried that it would ruin your career if you spoke accurately about your field of expertise, which is erosion and geology due to rainfall. Thousands of years of rainfall. Well, thousands of years of rainfall means, at the very least, the Sphinx is 9,000 years old.
Yeah.
At the very least. But that's probably way older than that because you have to have thousands of years of rainfall from the time that it was constructed to make these kind of deep fissures into this stone.
And it was buried for much of its recent history, which means there was not erosion taking place the entire time it was buried.
Yeah, the whole thing's nuts. And the wind and sand erosion, that's an argument against that, right? Because it was covered in sand.
Yeah.
And if there was rain erosion like they're proposing, it had to have been when there was rainfall, significant rainfall in the Nile Valley. And that's way back 9,000 years ago.
A long time ago. Yep. And, I guess it breaks my heart a little bit that this conversation gets shut down. Because if you think about 23andMe, right? Yeah. The number of people that have subscriptions to websites like that because they are extremely interested in where they came from. And it opens up their world when they can see 4 generations back. It gives them, people that belong to these subscription services will say, I finally have a sense of belonging. I kind of feel like I know where I came from. We as a humanity, imagine if we actually knew where we came from. I think we would feel a lot less lost.
I don't think it's sad. I think it's funny. I think it's just another example of just how funny people are, how we're so weird. We're so full of shit. And we're just so filled with this desire to be correct and to enforce our narrative that we do it even with facts that are like significantly important for the entire world.